What's up, y'all? It's your co-host Yogi Rich, introducing episode 7 of OneAnswer Yoga. What is truth? This episode, we really tease out the difference between perception and truth, and try to give tips and tools on how we know that we're acting from an authentic, honest space, rather than from opinion and from falsehoods. We tackle the difficulties of judgment and how it's corrosive to the South and society. Ironically, the Jeffrey Epstein story and the P. Diddy story kind of came out over these last couple weeks, and I feel like truth is also an important topic when it comes to the societal stories that we're being told, stereotypes that are placed on us, and also the greater, larger narratives that are always at play. And how do we, as an individual, operate from a place from discernment rather than judgment? Well, anyways, without further ado, please enjoy episode 7 of One Answer Yoga. One love. Peace.
All right, here we are. So we had an exciting week because we had actually pre-recorded a bunch of episodes, which we got to launch. And so it's super exciting that people are getting to finally hear these conversations between us. And it was so far good feedback.
Yes, still waiting, but we know that we're not attached to the result, and we put our best foot forward. And the folks that I have seen it with, they liked it. They also like me, so I don't know. They might be a little biased, but that's okay.
That's okay. If we just start with the people that like us, that's good enough.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like my wife, okay, good. My mom, okay, good. If those two like it, at least a little, I feel all right. If they like it, then anybody could like it. So that's dope.
Exactly, exactly. So what you got for us today?
A couple different things. I want to say too, like probably only have like maybe like an hour to chat more, but I feel like we'll get it all in there. I mean, I was listening to like even 30 minutes of our conversation, and it seemed like 2 hours of conversation, just like the different topics that we cover. But um, the timing is so perfect. When I sent I sent Radha a text. Usually I'll send Radha a text, and I'm like, oh, this is what's on my mind. And this is what's on my mind. So let me see what I put here. Um, I'm realizing how much we text too. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's been like a pretty busy last couple of days, like just pushing to get the editing done. And like every time I watch it again, I see like something else that I miss, and realizing like, ah, it's not about that. Like, it's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be what needs to be put out. What's done is done. And
And it's funny because Quentin and I like to chat a lot. So like we do chat throughout the week, but then we have like these things where we're like, no, 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 we can't talk about that. We gotta wait till we're recording. Put a pin in that one.
it's so
Like,
hard
how are
not
you
to get
doing? And then we get into something, we're like, no, 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 we don't get to talk about that. We gotta record.
exactly. That's exactly what. All right, hold on. Now I need to search a word because I'm realizing like, yeah, now it's all just blending together. Um, but I can give you like the setup. So here we go. Um, I was listening to Theo Vaughn and um, Theo Vaughn and also uh, Andrew Huberman, and they both were talking about the essence of like truthfulness, and how like Theo Vaughn, for those that aren't familiar, he's a comedian. He's almost even funnier in conversation than he is on stage, and he, if you've ever met that, you probably all have that friend that like is very intuitive in a way, but also doesn't always see certain things that everyone else does. Like is a little bit outside the box, but like still we still love it being around him. Like he really does personify that, and he doesn't try to be above anyone. He always looks at it like, I'm not understanding where you're coming from. Like, what does that mean? Can you explain that again to me? So he struggled with addiction a lot of his life, especially like coke specifically. He talks about it all the time. It's not like a secret or anything. And then he talks about stuff, going to AA meetings, rehab. He's also big into yoga. And in there, he's just talking about how important it is to be truthful. Like, when you're hiding something from others, each lie compounds, and like all of a sudden now you find yourself like every little detail about your life is a lie because everything has to justify something else that you've lied about. and just being able to be in that space and just be truthful, like just that, yeah, I did that. I'm sorry, but this is what actually happened. This is that crazy, the crazy stories that people tell while they're, in pursuit of or under the influence of a substance. But also, what I love about, like, so Theo Von specifically, like, there's like a substance that is an external factor, you could say, that's like influencing the mind. But when you're actually in AA, what they emphasize is that, like, no, there's something else going on internally that needs to be adjusted and accounted for in order for that true healing to occur. And um, it just so happens that, like, truthfulness when flowing through the vessel is a part of the healing process. Andrew Huberman, forget the study that he mentioned. He was talking to, it's right here, Anna Lembeck, who treats addiction, Dr. Anna Lembeck. So more on like the top side, kind of figuring out how to solve addiction, has mentioned how important truthfulness is to healing.
Mm.
And, you know, uh, the Diddy thing came out, Epstein files came out, and a lot of people feel like, on a societal scale, always try to bring it back to society and the yoga and the individual and everything kind of together. It's like, on a societal scale, there's a lot of distrust. They feel like there's a lot of dishonesty coming from the power sources on the cultural things, and then on the political things, and then on all aspects. And just so happens that it's just this week that all that's come to a head, where it's like, what's really true? And that lack of truth, you can see it in, like, the main commentators of our day are like, they just feel so much pain, so much, like, your lying is actually causing pain to yourself. Um, and when people, and also when you lie to others, you cause pain to them, right? And so anyway, so there's that interesting societal dichotomy too. So anyways, um, in yoga we have truthfulness, satya, which is very, 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 very important. The Ramayana, even mentions Rama. He's like, one of the things that was key about Rama was that he told the truth, like it was his life depended on it. And there's so many little rabbit holes we can go about the power of truthfulness and what it actually means for um, just for us on an individual level and how we live our lives. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on the healing impacts of truthfulness and maybe its role in our lives?
Yeah, I think it's a great, great topic because truthfulness, I also think gets really misconstrued. So people think a lot about truthfulness and they think a lot that their perception is the truth. And perception can be a lot of different things. And so, really weeding out what is actual truth, there are very few actual truths. Right. Even the Yoga Sutras talks about, like, yes, truthfulness is important and being in integrity. And sometimes I think integrity is more important even than the idea of truthfulness because, your two people can see the exact same event happening and they're going to have totally different recollections and reports on what happened. We've studied this. This has been studied extensively. So, what is the truth? We don't actually know what the truth is. We don't know what the actual circumstances are. So, I think perspective has to be part of that truthfulness. So, saying, from my perspective, this is what's happening. And I think that's such a key because so often we want to say, no, the truth is this happened. This is the way it is. And so much of our fighting and I mean, most wars are started over perspective. Really, it's not about truth because they say, no, this is the right way. This is how it has to be. And we have this sense of like rightness as opposed to this idea that everything is neutral. And then we put layers of meaning onto it to make it, quote unquote, our truth. So while I think truthfulness is really important, I think, first of all, it has to start with yourself. And part of that truthfulness is realizing we're not all knowing, we don't know everything, and that it is our perspective. And as we look at our perspective, then we can recognize that there are other truths and other perspectives. And this makes people so angry when I talk about this. I'm always like surprised how triggered people get when I say, like, there is no one truth. Like, truth is subjective. And
Yep.
they're like, no, there's truth. But I
Impossible.
really think, like, if you're getting down to, like, really what is truth? I mean, truth is like, okay, yes, there is some energy that flows through everything, and we don't really understand what that energy is. That is probably about as far as like truth really goes. Um, One of the things I love about the Lotus Temple, we have this beautiful temple here in Yogaville. I have this, I don't know if you can see this, I have this cute little thing that sits on my desk. That is a real place here in Virginia. That's called the Lotus Temple. Um, that was a real photo that somebody turned into this cute little desk thing.
I've been there. It's real.
It's
Yep.
called the Lotus Temple because it is the Light of Truth Universal Shrine. And so one of the interesting things about this particular temple that Swami Satchidananda created was that when you go down to the bottom, it shows it has artifacts from each of the different religions. And when you're in there, you can really see how each religion is really different. And then when you go up to the top, there's one light that goes up through the center and then branches out to all the different altars. And on each altar is a quote about the light. The idea and point being that every religion has some belief in the light, and that is the truth. So that belief surrounding the light and the unity of the light, that is the only truth that exists. All the other quote unquote truths are just diverse perspectives of this one truth. And so, I think the mind, remember when we were talking about like the buddhi and the ahamkara, like the buddhi wants to like categorize things so that we understand them. And so that's when truth gets a little funny because like we want to judgment starts to come in because once we start deciding things are right or wrong, there's a lot of judgment. Dee and I are always talking about judgment. Quentin, like, I am shocked by how easy it is for me to like backtrack into judgment about everything. Like every little thing I want to judge about. And I'm like, it's so exhausting to me that I'm constantly judging everything. I wish that little booty and that ahamkara could just like be quiet. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the whole point, right, of yoga is like all these vrittis calm down because I'm exhausted by the constant conversations that go on in my head. So I guess those are kind of like my initial thoughts is like when we're talking about truth, really it's about being in integrity with who you are and where you are and where you are at that moment. At that moment, because honestly, where you are right now is not necessarily where you're going to be tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And we really talk about that a lot when we're doing the physical practices, right? You show up on the mat and most experienced yoga teachers, I'm going to use experienced, will ensure that the minute you step onto the mat, they remind you that you have to be mindful of who you are in that moment. That you're not who you were yesterday, you're not who you're going to be tomorrow, but your practice exists in this moment on the mat right now. And accepting who you are in that moment really is leaning into that integrity and that truth of who you are and how you exist in this moment. It doesn't mean that what is true today on the mat is going to be what is true tomorrow or what was true yesterday. And so when we can kind of take that same analogy of the mat and be like, what is true for me in this moment is not necessarily what's going to be true tomorrow, was true yesterday, then we can start to be like, really, it's about being in integrity with where I am at that moment. And I think that's like, again, we use this word truth a lot. We throw it around like a weapon. God, people weaponize truth in ways that just shocks me sometimes. But really looking at truth is like, just how am I being in this moment and what am I owning about how I am in this moment? And also recognizing it's just my perspective of how I am in this moment. And even somebody else's perspective of me is going to be different than the way that I perceive myself in this moment. And so much of truth is based on perception of where we're at. So those are some initial apparently I got a lot to say about truth.
Just a few. Oh my goodness. Oh, that warmed my heart listening to the. I mean, there's so many things like forgiveness, the judgment, the layering on the opinions onto what's happened. what's interesting, truth is that light, or um, I like to look at it as like, okay, there's the sun, all right? It's like, like, is it true or not that the sun provides heat and light? Yes. Okay, boom. And when you say like no to that, or because I guess the main emphasis of truthfulness and how it applies to the human being is, all right, are you being are you authentically expressing where you are in the moment, right? Really is what we're trying to get down to, because a lot of the times, the answer is no. Like, no, I'm not actually authentically expressing myself. um I'm not actually like doing what I feel like I should be doing. And feel like I all these kind of words have dual meaning, because it's like, what level are we talking about here? Are we talking about the level of the mind, what it would exist in the mind, or are we talking about like that higher self, what the mind is reflecting? um the thing about truth is that, like, really what you kind of said in there was like, what I was picking up was like, judgment isn't real. The reason, like, you can judge things, but your judgment of them isn't real in and of itself. It's not truth now just because you said so. But let me pause real quick. Um I think I hear the
Yeah,
echo.
we
Okay.
had a little
Yeah,
airplane sound
yeah.
going.
Let me see. I got let me grab these headphones. Let me see if that'll help.
All right, I'm gonna pause this recording while we figure out our sound for a minute.
Okay, all right, let's pause.
Okay, we're back. We got no hum now.
Hope so. Let's keep it
Maybe it
up.
was just universal om.
Yeah. Joining in our conversation. Um ooh, yeah, that might be an interesting thing to talk about, truth, because it's like, okay, what is an experience, right? An experience, like, the reason why I mentioned the sun in the heat and the light is, to me, it's like there's light and sound almost when it comes to like um the truth, or capital T truth. We were talking a little bit about sound vibration, and like, at least as far as the conscious experiences from like the perceiver, certain sounds have a certain impact on consciousness. Light has a certain impact on consciousness, like a blue light versus a red light versus a purple light. Like, if stared at for a while, they impact the psyche a little bit different if you can see them, hypothetically. Even in like the animal kingdom, poisonous things have certain colors. Certain animals can't see, like deer can't see neon orange and pink and stuff like that. Like, these things have, um, you know, quote unquote, like, we can experience them influencing life outside of human life in a way that's like tangible. And but what I liked about what you said was that, like, that perception of truth, because when you start to forgive yourself, that narrative that you have about your life starts to change. Um, and that's what really comes to that cathartic experience through addiction, where it's like, that's why I love comedians so much, is because a lot of them make a living out of making light of the terrible things that they've done to themselves or to others, or have been done happen to them. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's like, yeah, if this is an event that happened, and you can color it whichever way you'd like, and sort of
Mhm.
that judgment, because you could say positive judgment too might not be good either. But if you're in a space right now where you're primarily negatively judging yourself and others, it might be better to positively judge yourself and others as a way to counteract that. But then you'll get to a space where it's like, it's always a tool at your disposal, and you're not swayed on either way. Like, and you're rather choosing to be positive from an authentic space, rather than um, um, reflexively being negative, for lack of a better word. Anyways, so
I
what
think
I felt,
people often think that their thoughts are true. Like, I think we touched on this before, but people really think I thought it and therefore it's true. Like, that's an interesting concept, right? Of like, I mean, I think I've said this already in this podcast, and you guys are going to hear me say it a million times over. Just because you think it does not make it true. And that's a really powerful thing to wrap your head around, because most people go through their lives thinking, I thought this thought and therefore it's true. Because I thought it, it must be true. My perception, my perspective is always the true one. And that's where, like, I think there's a lot more nuance, because really the only truth is that we are all part of something higher. So, like, in the Yoga Sutras, often in the commentary, Swami Satchidananda refers to it as like the seer. Um, so that seer, right, is really the only true thing. And so anything that is not the clear reflection of the seer then no longer becomes the truth. It's just he uses the example of the mirror. So when the seer, we can't see our own faces, right? He says you can never see your own face. You can only see your reflection in the mirror. So Quentin has never seen his own face. I've never seen my own face. Right now, even on the video, we're seeing a reflection of ourselves. That is not actually our real face. And so right now, when I'm looking at Quentin's video, his video is a little like grainy. If Quentin was looking at himself, he might be like, oh God, something is messed up with my face. I am clearly, blurry or, misshapen. We're using an extreme example here, but we do it all the time on little levels. And so he might think, oh my God, something's wrong with me. Like something's wrong with my face. My face is not right. But really, it's just the mirror in which he's looking at, meaning this video, is just not showing up. It's pixelated. So if you're looking in a mirror and the mirror is cloudy or dirty, you are not cloudy or dirty. It's just the reflection in the mirror. And so the only truth is that seer itself is our true selves. And that true self is what unites all of us. And that is really the only truth that we truly know. According to the Yoga Sutras, everything else is just perception. And that's really powerful. And he said something, I was reading something this morning, and that's why I have my glasses on, because I was trying to find it. Um, uh, he was saying, we have all these different things that we call ourselves, but without any identifications, who you are. Have you ever thought about that? When you really understand that, you will see we are all the same. If you detach yourself completely from all the things you have identified yourself with, you realize that you, yourself, as the pure I, in that pure I, there is no difference between you and me. And that is the only truth. Everything else is just like, smears on the mirror. And so when we're talking about perception, if you want to talk about being really true, particularly if you want to find your way out of addiction, I find like that is the perfect place to start. You are not your addiction. That is just something that you are experiencing. And so often, like, we're always reminded in yoga to be very mindful of the ways that we categorize ourselves or the things we put onto ourselves. And that's why, like, in mental health now, they don't say, you are depressed, you have depression, you are not anxious, you have anxiety. Even in mental health, they're starting to realize you have to start separating out these things that you think you are and these categorizations of yourself as away from the mind and what's capable. And so I think, like, as we're looking at truth, the truth is not that you are anxious. That says that's who you are. You are not that. You have anxiety. And so when you can start to like analyze and look at your thoughts and the way that you're categorizing yourself, DBT does a great job. If you are struggling right now with any mental health stuff and you haven't been through DBT, it's a really powerful technique. Obviously, cognitive behavioral therapy is also based a lot in this, like breaking down your thoughts, making sure you understand like what's happening. And they're using DBT a lot now. Well, they have been for the last like 15 years to really cure addiction, because they're realizing when people realize they are not their addiction, that their addiction is something that they have, and you can cure sort of the underlying feelings of the judgment of yourself. Because that's the hardest part, is we judge ourselves so harshly all the time. And it's when we judge ourselves, we are more likely to turn around and judge others. So I always say, like, the people who are the most critical of other people, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, wow, like I just want to like love up on you and give you a hug and take that little like baby self that lives inside of you and be like, you are enough. You are perfect just as you
Hmm.
are, like inside. All these other external things are not who you are. They cannot, they don't define you because truly underneath it all, we're all this pure reflection. And that goes back to sort of like when we are talking about that's a little different than Christianity, right? Like in Christianity, you're born with original sin. In yoga, you're born as, part of the seer, the true self, the universal energy that exists in everything. And that can be a challenging one sometimes when people come from like a Judeo-Christian, like there's God away from me. God is something separate as opposed to I am God.
You know, I want to mention the other things you said, but that like we'll start with that point because I told you about my apostle Kevin at Strong Towers Ministry. He didn't take that approach. He said, once you're like, once you're baptized, or once you have, because even in the yogic system, you still have to be Krishna conscious, right? Or you still have to be aware of the truth in order to even really be open to the rest of, the truth as you explain it. We're part of a larger whole. And but how Apostle Millfield would always say it is he'd be like, in Christ there is no sin. Like you are part of, like that's the point. Is like you get to this point where your actions are just happening. It's so interesting. Once you have that point of view that you're a part of a whole, your perception of all your actions start to shift. Your perception of your thoughts start to shift. You say, and in Islam there's a phrase and it goes, "Whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on earth, it all belongs to God. It all belongs to, it all is under the same purview. It's all seen by the seer, and or this way, or under the influence of the seer." And I think that's where truth transmutes it a little bit, because there is this thing in the power of the word and the creative force. And I wonder, like, does this come from the seer? Because, like, what is intent, or what is, uh, if we are able to influence the mind and body, what are the tools in which we're doing so? Um, if we're not using the mind to influence the mind, right? Well, how does will apply to the mind? Like, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you're using this other force to impact the material force, and I think that that's the power of word. Is that, like, in the Yoga Sutras it talks about the power of truthfulness, or um honest and non-violent beneficial speech. Like the more that you start to maybe do that in your own perception of your own self and actually do it like you're really authentically expressing yourself, you have more of a symbiotic relationship with reality. It seems, it feels like when you're in a, like, using a very simple example, it's like when you are lying in your own personal point of view, right? You live like you're living in a sea of lies, which takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of, like, it takes a lot of just a lot to maintain it.
So much energy.
Yeah, so much energy, so much of that
All the
creative.
stories take so much energy. The stories we tell
Literally,
ourselves, they're
yes,
exhausting.
yes,
So much easier just to be like
and then we
living.
mantra
It's
them.
weird because we're so drawn to dichotomy, right? Like
Mm,
we're so drawn to black and whites and truth and negativity and positivity and all of these definers that
mm.
our little brain wants to, our mind wants to have these definers, but they're exhausting. When you start to release the defining, this is right, this is wrong, this is this, trying to constantly, it's like calming that booty down. So it's like not so booty, not
Like
booty.
calming that booty down. Both, it will work both
Calm
ways.
that booty down. When you're calming it down so that there's not so much chatter and then the ego doesn't get involved and say, you're right, that is the right answer. That's the way everybody should do it. When you can start to have control, because again, remember, yoga is restraint of the mental modifications of the mind. That is the definition of yoga. And so when you can start to calm down those definitions, like when that modification and all the chaos starts to like become more peaceful, it takes way less energy. It is more pleasant. You are happier. You are more peaceful. You are more in alignment with, again, the true self, which is not, on this ocean of waves and craziness. And so I think that's when, yeah, it becomes easier. Your life just gets easier. And who doesn't want an easier life right now? I mean, life can
Literally.
feel really hard right now, especially with all the information that's been throwing us and all the truths that are being, I mean, truth social is a thing, like truth
Yeah.
social,
Yeah.
right? Just even trying to own the idea of truth to me is crazy. Like, I'm like, why would you try to co-opt truth? Because you
1984.
want people to see only your perspective. And I'm not, I'm not,
Yeah, you're not picking
I'm
on anybody because it's been
pretty
like that for
moderate, as
centuries.
I'm very independent, very
Yeah.
moderate. You're going to find like when we're talking politics, I'm just kind of really in between. I just don't live in that world of like good, evil, wrong, right, bad, whatever. Um, and we can still make observances about things that we see, which is like nobody gets to co-opt truth.
Even if you try, there will always
Even if,
be.
I mean,
They
I guess
try.
they can,
No, I mean
but we don't
that's
have to go
what.
along with co-opting truth.
No, no, and I think just from an independent standpoint, you can very much see that like even when two people are arguing that you both might even love, like you can hear them say things about the other person that they just sound different because you're not on that opposite team and you're not on their team. And it just gives you like a little bit of space. And I think that's what we're saying in the mind is because the mind isn't multifaceted. Usually there's the Toltec, always giving them shouts outs. Many of them, uh, there's the victim and the judge in the mind both. Like there's the judge and there's the person that's like being defeated by that judgment in your own mind simultaneously. And you'll often switch between the two internally within your own self and also with others. Like, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of type energy that the mind will create in certain circumstances. This is more negative thought patterns and when you take the opinion of the observer, you can then be like, okay, wait a minute. First of all, both of the judge and the victim, they're like kind of wigs dressed up as other people. Like this little mental trick I play to myself to remind myself that I'm not my thoughts. I'm a very visual thinker too. I've also realized this is a part of people's mental makeup is some people can't visualize. Some people feel they're more emotional. They can make they create things in their mind through emotions. Some people are very word dominant. I'm more visually dominant. Whatever, just all different things. But I like to imagine, like, let's say I'm interacting or I'm acting out some sort of like previous experience in my memory, or I'm acting out like I'm projecting an anxiety of like a certain confrontation that I might have in the future. And what I'll do is like in my memory, I have to remind myself that like that memory that you have of your wife or Quessy or your homie or whoever, that's really just you and their like you're wearing their makeup. Like as I'm sitting here watching this mental play, it's a mental play where I'm all the characters. And we even know like our memory is fuzzy, like even within a couple of days. Like so so for anybody that's like kind of struggling
Even
with that, like
within moments, even in real time, our memory is fuzzy.
exactly. So it's like, when if you're ever like that might be a little trick too, where it's like these voices in my head, they're really just me in playing this person. They're not even actually there. They're not actually there to defend themselves and speak on it. Another tool for to fight against judgment I found is another thing from the Toltec is just a phrase like I don't have time to judge myself. And because it's easier to tell when you're judging yourself, right? Because no one is judging, like, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, you're sitting there and you're just like in the mirror and you're like, oh, I don't like the way this looks. And no one's there. Like, no one's saying that to you. You're just saying it to yourself. And you're just like, okay, I don't have time to judge myself. You can do it with small things like that. And I find that the body really helps because a lot of the body and our thought process really help if you focus on those things because those are the things that we judge others by primarily how they look and how they think. So, you can usually tackle both at the same time too. There's a correlation like some people look like villains, some people look like good guys. There's almost like that energy where it's like so anyway, so we have that inside of ourselves too where it's like
I
there's
think
parts
I
of
think what and then the villain and the good guy. again, are like these tropes that were taught to
Mm-hmm.
us. And we think they're true. I mean, this was one of the things that I would say was the most like eye-opening for me when I really started to do training around DEI. Because DEI started talking to me about white colonialism. And all of a sudden, everything that I took for granted to be true, I started questioning and being like, wait, who decided we needed to have money? Who decided that we needed to have governments? Who decided that we needed to be this way? Who decided that we needed to drive on this side of the road? Who decided that we needed to XYZ? And all of a sudden, it became like this really yana yoga exercise for me, kind of like this who am I? But it was like, where did this come from? Where is the truth in this? And then you start realizing, like, oh, it was like these, white guys who once upon a time were trying to gain control through the church or the
I mean,
government, and people were grabbing for power and they wanted their version. And of course, in order to be right, right, in order for you to convince other people to go along with what you're doing, often people want to be right. So there's this like rightism that happens where like, no, this is the right way to do it, so this is how we all have to do it. Whereas there really is no right or wrong way to do it. There's just
ways.
different ways of doing it.
I
And
mean,
realizing how much even me being raised in an ashram, just because I was raised in the US, just because I exist even on this planet, how much of this white colonial stuff that again is not, I'm not talking even about the people who are alive today. I'm talking about like how much of it got influenced by some dude that was running the planet 3,000 years ago.
yeah. I
Like, and
mean,
how much
the,
his need for power is now still influencing the belief system I have today, which is cray cray when you think about it that way.
I mean, oh my goodness, you give me chills. Everything you just said gave me chills because, of course, the topic of my entire life has been like, okay, well, what y'all say about me isn't true. Like, I'm 30 now, so all my life I've been a young black guy, pretty much. And so like when we grew up, like our uncles, we always had that point of view, but there was tension in the family more so typically between like there was always kind of this tension, I would say, a little bit, generally speaking, between like the status quo and the you could say like the colonial European status quo and like being more in tune with what you're saying. Like Malcolm X is one of his most popular quotes is like, "Who told you to hate the color of your skin? Who told you to hate your hair? Who told you to hate these things about yourself?" Like and so to me, growing up my entire life, it was abundantly clear that like all these things that and like growing up in Stafford, like it's not like a black place for sure. There were some black people around us, but it was very much like there was a clear difference, like and
Mm-hmm.
um a lot of the ways that we like operated ourselves, like the way that my uncles talked about me, my dad's brothers. So these were guys that were born in the 30s, from the 30s, 40s, and the 50s, right? So their point of view was always like whenever they talk to us, any of the young bucks is like, you have to understand like we're all a part of this like story. Like have context when you're making your decisions that like many of these things are first. Many of these things that like you experience like were intentionally kept away, and not in a not in a DEI sense, but like so like to me like I was a little aggravated, like not aggravated, but like just like oh now you want to get it like now's the time for people to really understand like even though Malcolm X got assassinated like in the 60s like now people are finally understanding what we've been talking about for what I heard my entire life, and I'm just one person. I didn't even grow up like in a around my family like that. Like what I'm saying is, I didn't grow up in a completely black area. So like so that's probably even doubly, triply frustrating because all their uncles, were like, bro, like this is like big truth. The media is a big part of this because it's like who told us? Well, the answer is the printing press or like the people in Europe, the people that controlled the printing press were the nobility, who even within themselves felt better than the people that lived within a mile radius then because their great great granddaddy did something great. So like even the system of nobility that existed there, you know, had this context already built into it to where it was like any other people that they encountered, there was almost no room for them to even view them like with the same dignity and respect that they thought of their own nobility. Like that wouldn't even make sense, right? Um, so I don't blame them, but I think I think really what I'm trying to say here is that like, but they're wrong, and when you realize that you're wrong, like imagine, do you see the amount of prosperity and growth can happen when you start to realize like that no, there's actually one truth, like
Yeah.
because of
And then
that
it doesn't
truth,
have to be one or the other. It
it doesn't
doesn't
have
have to
to
be you or me.
it doesn't have to be you or me. Like it can be we. Like that's a word too, right? You've heard of it. Like it can be all of us here, and we can figure out a way to like collaborate and coordinate. And if there's like if you really feel like you need certain things, like there's ways you can get that through collaboration rather than through manipulation, through lying, through all these different things. Like a lot of the things that you this is what we're trying to say. It's like the reason why you don't have to fear authentic expression, the reason why you don't have to fear judgment is because it's meant to be expressed. Like it's sort of like this. It's like imagine having a car and a nice car, right? And it can go a certain speed, but all you do is drive like 5 miles an hour because of fear of like all the different reasons. Like you can go to a spot, you'd be like, well, I'm afraid of the people and how they might see me if I start driving fast here. Then you might go to a mountainous place and you might be afraid of the terrain. And then you might go to afraid of another place because you might be afraid of the crime. But you have all these reasons to restrain yourself and keep yourself down. And that's the problem with what we're saying, because like we're saying truth on what two levels. Like let's take like the higher truth, or the lower truth is like that authentic expression in the moment. Like there is that capacity to choose to be dishonest for in the name of the ego, in the name of security or whatever it is, or just put it all out there. And I really like astrology, and what you'll find is like this is essentially what Leo energy is. Leo energy, if you know any Leos, it's like I did that and what? Like they almost inherently know that it's like what you do is what you do. It's your business. It's not you. And try judging a Leo. It's not going to go well. And it's not those tools don't work. So it was so inspiring about Leo and the lion and wrapping the whole story like to Bob Marley a little bit is that was that message that they spoke about was like don't look at it as just like, because a lot of even in the black community, a lot of them can get radicalized and very centric on Europeans, and that like this is the problem and this, but Bob Marley and them keep reminding that no, like this has been since Babylon. Like this is a in before this is a long chain of governments and systems and manipulating people and creating rules that are inauthentic to benefit certain folks and using lies and all these certain things, and sort of replicated over and over again, where the people in power will use a lack of truth to control others and ourselves, and but not to get caught up on that, and really to look at that as like that can be part of the human psyche, that even you can fall susceptible for that. And on the individual level, it's like, okay, when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and like how do you know you're telling yourself a lie? Because it's you need to use an identifier to like use it. So like even earlier, like like just now I was like I'm black, right? So I'm black. It's not true on literally every level. The color of my skin isn't black. Even my hair isn't actually black. I'm wearing a black shirt. I'll take that. But what are all of the stereotypes of what it means to be a black man, or what are all the rules of what it means to be a black man? Like if you were to meet 30 of us and ask us like all the different things, like you would find wide spectrum and variety. Like me, I'm vegan. Some people are completely carnivore. Me, and even in that same person, you might find that complete spectrum. So what you'll see is that like when you keep like further examining all these certain identifiers that like even I don't really. I would like to say that I've tried to identify with much less things now, but when you do that like process, what am I? What am I not? You get down to like I'm. It's just I. But you're saying it's just I. Like even earlier, as like I mentioned, I'm a Virginian. Like these are just used in conversation, but in reality, more accurately, is like I'm a person. but we don't even really know what a person is. Swami Satchidananda says, you know, we are universal beings. Our consciousness impacts everything that's conscious is impacted by our conscious because we're part of the seer. So, anyways, what I think
I think it
we,
also,
hmm
yeah, Quentin, if sometimes not identifying as anything can be a little big for people to like
yeah,
grasp onto in the beginning. Just being like, oh, I'm part of like the big universe and I am nothing. And but sometimes I think if you can recognize that you're playing a role,
mm,
it can be useful. Like this is the role I'm playing this time around. This is the role that I'm playing in this big cosmic play. This is the role I'm playing in this big cosmic movie. Because the idea is that like the reason why all of this was created, the reason why all of us were created was so that like, the ultimate seer can experience itself, right? God wanted to experience itself. And so therefore it created the universe because it needs manifest to be able to experience the unmanifest, right? Unmanifest cannot be experienced. It has to be made into manifest for us to experience it. And so the beauty of the manifest is this incredible amount of diversity. So it's not wrong. It's not like, oh, you can't identify, you can't play the role of a black man. That may be the role you're playing, in which case that's a pretty fun role in many ways. So kind of a not fun role in many ways, right? So recognizing that these are roles that we're playing and they're going to have, as long as we're, in this world, in this Maya, in this experience of the unmanifest experiencing itself as manifest, then we do have these things that we're playing. And that's okay, as long as you remember you are not the role.
hmm
That's not who you are. Because as soon as we start to identify with these things, is when we start to lose our peace. Because we start to like, if I'm this, then I'm not that. If I'm this, then you have to be something else. And so that's when we start to like really start the peace and the knowing starts to break apart and we start to no longer identify with that unmanifest, with that seer, which exists in everything. And so it's
cool.
fine to play a role. It's fine to enjoy it. I mean,
But
there's
I
so
was,
much in yoga, so much in
mm,
spirituality where people are trying to transcend their humanness. They're trying to get out of their human selves, out of their human bodies, out of this human experience. But the whole idea of all of this creation was because it's supposed to be experienced, right? Like we're supposed to be human and have this human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Don't forget about the human experience part. That's
mm,
the yummy part. And so
mm,
love, laugh, cry, you know, uh, all the emotions. Go swim in the oceans and the rivers and the lakes. Like, look at the sunrise and the sunset. Like, it's supposed to all be experienced and enjoyed as long as you don't identify yourself with it. Because as soon as we start identifying, then we also start getting attached, right? Then when it's taken away from us, we think something was taken from us, and therefore our happiness is taken from us. But really, our happiness, that seer, that self of existence, that unmanifest is who we are. And so it cannot be taken away from us.
mm.
And then also recognizing because we are part of that cosmic energy, that seer, that unmanifest, then we are enough. You were born, you exist, you still have breath. Therefore, that's all that's expected of you. That's all you have to do. That is enough. But we're constantly trying to identify with all of these things, and so we're chasing some sort of, thing that we think we have to have or be or do in order to be enough, to have a right to be born on this planet, to exist in this world. And then we have everybody telling each other, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough, you have to do this, be this, experience this, all of these things in order for us to be enough. When really, do you exist? Are you breathing right now? Do you exist right now? Then that's it. You just fulfilled your entire purpose of being, because that's all it takes. That's all you need to do is just be who you are that day, that minute, that moment. And then it takes off a lot of that weight, because again, even when you get back to addiction's constantly chasing this feeling of I find like people with addiction are often like the most spiritually oriented people I meet because they are the spiritual seekers. They are the ones who are looking at reality as it exists right now and saying, I can't deal with this. This is
Mm,
not enough. This is not okay with me.
mm,
And so they're trying to find outside sources to create the okayness, either the numbing. Um, my really dear friend John, who passed away from a drug overdose, one of the things he said was like being happy felt just as intense for him as being sad. And so he was constantly trying to just like tamp everything down because he was just one of these people who just like felt everything so intensely
mm.
that it was like he needed the drugs to be able to calm it down. Now, he did not have the spiritual upbringing and the you are enoughness that I was raised with. Um, so I think when we can start to fill in that gap of like, it's okay, like you are just who you are, that's fine. You don't have to be anything other than who you are.
Mm.
Then it can help a little bit. But of course, we also have a lot of, other factors in our environments and our culture and everything that makes it really challenging for people who are highly sensitive, highly spiritual to exist. And honestly, that's why when you get into some of these like rooms with people who are, in AA or NA or they're some of the like most extraordinary people you will ever meet because they are these really spiritual, sensitive, intuitive, incredible people who are just not able to exist again in this white colonial version of what we've put onto everybody in this environment, saying you have to be able to work a 9 to 5 job. You have to be able to like tamp down all the pain. You have to be able to like do all these things. And so they're the ones who are kind of like the canary in the coal mine too, just being like, I can't do it. And so then they have to like use all these substances to kind of deal with whatever is going on. But
Yeah, I love
ultimately,
that. I love that you said that
it's okay
because to
too.
me,
That's
one
just
of
the
the
role they're
chief
playing at that.
substances is caffeine.
Oh God, caffeine.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sugar.
yeah,
Boogie Down Productions has this great song that it came out with like in the 80s or early 90s maybe. Um, and it's like cocaine business controls America, but then it goes through all of these things like that also are drugs that I think like KRS-One was so enlightened and reaching like such an incredible number of people uh with his message because he is talking about like, nicotine, caffeine, morphine,
yeah.
sugar, tobacco, like all of these things that we use as tools to kind of just like coping mechanisms to deal with
It's so
this crazy
true.
world.
It's so yeah. I mean, like why did one of the main reasons that at least we were told that people settled in Virginia was for cash crops, which we would call drugs today. And nicotine, for example, has a very calming and mellowing like impact and focusing impact on the mind. And so to me, it's like, would you live the life you live without your substance? That's a sign that you might not be living that. Now you could do that, but what you'll often find is that like, you stop doing this substance or you shift your habits, like everything else in your life shifts. The people that start to approach you shift. Not good or bad. I'm not saying none of that, but all I'm saying is it does happen. And you just got to be aware too that
Well, and
like,
every plant content has medicine, right? Plant medicine is real.
exactly.
Every
Exactly.
plant has an energy and it has a medicine that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And so honoring that plant medicine, nicotine is not bad. Cocaine, the coca plant is not bad in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is the abusive way in which we interact with it. Caffeine in itself is not bad. But in
Yeah.
order to work, me included, in order to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, I know that I'm a little addicted to work, and there was a lot of caffeine fueling that work cycle
Mm-hmm.
for me. That is abuse of the plant. And believe me, anytime you abuse plant medicine, I see this a lot with alcohol, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
alcohol is also plant medicine. Like when you distill these plants, they have an incredible energy. But if you abuse that plant, it's going to come back and bite you on the butt,
Yep.
right? Anybody who drank
100%.
too much, and then, you will know that that plant will come and get you. And each plant, like, right, people will talk about alcohol, how alcohol, depending on what you drink, which liquor you're drinking, will have a different energy or a different effect.
Mm.
Sorry, I dropped my pen. Um, that is that plant medicine, right? Each plant has a different energy. So if you are drinking tequila versus vodka versus whiskey versus whatever, it's all going to have a different energy because it's a different medicine. Just like
Yep.
even when you're dealing with like different weed, or, even if you're
Hmm.
dealing with green tea or matcha or whatever it is, honor the plant and you'll probably be okay. But the minute you
Hmm.
start abusing the plant, that plant energy is powerful. It's going to come and tell you about it.
Wow. I think that's a great thing like to talk about when it comes to truth because there's so much misconception about our relationship to the planet and that like, we're the only conscious things and all these other things are kind of dumb. They just have these certain things that they do. Like even in pharmaceuticals, what do they say? All their medications are derived from plants. And I think like you'll probably hear me say this over and over again. Like one of my main thrusts with not destroying the planet is because like most of the life forms on the planet are meant to live symbiotically, and like it's not coincidental. Like the human consciousness, and it's actually an incredible blessing that we can even experience these things and measure them against each other, and even just even be able to have this conversation about like how this impacts the mind versus other things and what we're saying is moderation is key. And because really what we're saying is like, the reason why you can be non-addicted to these plants and not rely on them as, because really what most people would say is like, well, without my cup of coffee in the morning, I can't do anything like, or I can't even like walk in a straight line, which might be true acutely for that moment. I'm not saying it's not true, but what I'm saying is like, but the deeper sentiment we've been articulating is like, no, you're not this, you're not any of this, like you are separate from this. And that like yoga challenges us really to practice mastery, right? We're trying to control the mind, the like to still the mental modifications, which means we have to operate from a position of mastery and even from a seat of mastery to even be able to do that. And I find that with truthfulness in my own personal life, like when I find myself being more authentically myself in that moment, projecting my own perception, but with the intention to be beneficial, with the intention to be healing, um, there seems to be like this force that backs it, as opposed to when I'm saying things out, that are lying either to protect myself. And I also want to say like there's a third category that Swami Satchidananda references, which is like, what if some person runs into your house and, let's say a runaway slave comes into your house, for example, and now there's a person looking for them. Like, the right thing to do is protect your life. You can still give off the impression or try to give off the impression that there's no one there without trying to lie, without lying directly. And, saying like, well, why would I have a person like that here? Like, how long have I lived here? Have you ever seen me with someone like that here? Just, there's often many, many tools that at least we're not even taught about. And I think what we're talking about is this system of domestication that we all lived in. We've been taught the benefits of being untruthful. Our media and our greater societal structures, like the state, corporations, advertisements, run off of the idea that it's okay to be not accurate with your own perception of what you're doing. And well, what I'm saying is like even there's no real need to even retaliate against those folks. Like we bear the consequences of our own of our own actions, and the Yoga Sutras I feel like give a really good specific example of if you find that there's a lot of things in your life that you feel like are going awry, check the just one thing you can do is just see how honest you are and be like, okay, like even as a joke sometimes it will be dishonest in the name to be funny, or we might like exaggerate on top of the exaggeration to be a little bit over the top and now it's not actually true, things like that. There's all these different nuances, but I found that practicing mental awareness and being like, okay, if I want folks to honor me, or if I want the universe to honor me and honor my word, then I've got to honor it in response. And that there's that symbiotic relationship that if there is a message that's flowing through you that you feel like you have to say at a particular moment that is honestly truthful and beneficial, instead of censoring yourself and falling prey to that like temptation and be like, no, I can't say that right now. Like I might, I might suffer some way, but at the end of the day, the truth suffers and you end up suffering by not expressing that. And that you have the strength to bear the consequences. You're never like, the truth is an offense. Like that's one of Bob Marley's favorite lines. It's just like, the truth is an offense in society. Folks might not always love the truthful, but you can rest assured that you'll be secure and safe in your own conscience, but also the world's looking out for you. Be like, that's a truthful person. I've got that guy's back because at least I know that person
And
means
that's
what
why
they're
I could
saying.
go back to like,
Mm,
yeah, and going back to this idea of my perspective. My perspective can be my truth.
mm.
I'm not saying it's your truth, but it's definitely my perspective. And so I think, kind of going back actually to what you were saying originally about Jeffrey Epstein and all of this stuff that's coming out.
Be an hour.
There's a lot of people like, we believe people, we don't believe people. Did this happen? Did this not happen? Um, but the truth is, if somebody's suffering, I mean, even we like to say the truth is, my perspective is that if somebody's suffering, that's reason enough to give them compassion, love, support. Um, whether it is quote unquote true or not, I know that we put a lot of weight into that, and that's really important to us because, again, we believe that if other people don't think it's true, then we don't have the right to feel it and we don't have the right
Mm,
to experience what we're experiencing. And so we want validation from others for quote unquote our truth. But the truth is, again, God, wow, I get to watch my language. My perspective is
mm.
that my perspective is that everybody who is suffering, we go back to the four locks and four keys and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So they say, how do you deal with all people? Well, there's four locks and four keys. And it is, I'm going to totally blank out on them right now, but it's
I got your
compassion
back.
towards friendliness towards the happy, compassion towards the unhappy, disregard for the quote unquote wicked, and delight in the virtuous. So this whole idea of like compassion towards the unhappy, well, if something really challenging or difficult or painful happened to someone, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It is their experience and they are unhappy. And therefore, the only real way to respond to that is with compassion.
Mm,
So, like, if your spouse comes to you and says, you didn't pick up the groceries like I asked you to, and they're yelling and screaming at you and getting really upset, they're clearly unhappy. So what is your reaction going to be? Are you going to yell back at them? No, you're like, this person's unhappy. The only way to respond is with compassion and to say, honey, wow, it sounds like that was really important to you. I am so sorry. Like, I really didn't understand. Obviously, I would never want to hurt you. So why would I have intentionally tried to hurt you by forgetting to pick up the toilet paper? I'm using a ridiculous example, but these ridiculous examples, again, it's the small day-to-day examples that amplify into a bigger level in the world. So if somebody comes to us and says, um, I was abused in any way, why would we be like, that's not true? Why?
mm,
Why would you say that? Again, the defensiveness that comes up in us, we got to look at our own self of why did that trigger me? Why am I feeling
mm.
defensive about it? It has nothing to do with the other person. The other person, the only way to respond to that is with compassion, like, that sounds really awful. Like, I am so sorry that happened to you. What can I do to support you? How can I love you? How can I be, and that goes with, I think, anytime anyone is speaking up about their experience of abuse. Because again, I must say something maybe a little unpopular here, but truth is subjective. So is there any truth to anything? No. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, one person's experience of something is not going to be the same. And this is also where we get upset with each other, right? Because we're like, well, something like that happened to me and I'm fine.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that is
Hmm.
not, that's your experience. That is not this other person's experience. This person's saying this happened to me and it caused me pain and suffering, and I'm struggling because of it. And for us to be like, well, it happened to me. I'm totally okay. And I think that goes with like whether we are talking about like uh racism. I mean, isn't that like the frustrating part about like what we've been dealing with racism? Well, somebody judged me or somebody discriminated against me or somebody did this to me and clearly I'm fine. Well, you're not me.
Yeah.
And so constantly like looking at it like, okay, using these four locks and four keys. And then disregard for the wicked is an interesting thing because it doesn't mean like um we don't have to like just do nothing. But it means that that behavior or that wicked behavior or that thing, that action. And again, I would say like as opposed to thinking of like these four locks and four keys as people, like there are wicked people or unhappy people or happy people or virtuous
Yeah.
people. I think we got to think of them as like actions or like seasons or, things that are being
Yeah.
embodied as opposed to just like a flat person. Um, so when we see that wicked behavior, rather than feeding into the wicked behavior, disregarding that and then focusing on the other aspects of what's going on is the way that the Yoga Sutras have told us to handle these sorts of situations. But the one for me, because let's be honest, like the one I feel like I use more than anything is going to be compassion towards the unhappy because it's
Yeah.
really hard to find happy people or people are
Literally.
happy all the time. Most of the time we're reacting to stuff because we're unhappy. So I just find compassion is like I try to just
Yeah.
have that as my default because chances are just people are unhappy, they have unhappy circumstances. So I find compassion to be the really useful one to deal with everything. So I think in the situation when you're looking at these women who suffered and they're saying I suffered because of this, it doesn't mean everybody's going to suffer the same thing. I mean, there are women I'm sure who went through the same experience who also feel kind of irritated that they're in the spotlight or that their stories are being told for them, um, but that's irrelevant of what the experiences of these specific women who are coming forward and saying I'm suffering and I
Mm.
suffered because of this, and therefore the Yoga Sutras say the only way to respond to this is with compassion.
Yeah. And I love that in the wickedness, like, because some people with the judgment that we're talking about, if you have like an automatic mantra of judging yourself and others, then oftentimes that judgment views them as wicked. It'll often kind of skew the tail to be like, okay, I'm gonna cut this person off, I'm gonna cuss this person out, right? And so that's why tackling judgment itself is so critical because there's a lot of people that are in front of you, they're just unhappy. Like the wife example, how many, I mean, the husband trope is like she's just nagging. She actually doesn't really care. She just wants to be mean. She's just, and it's like, no, because so I'm just going to disregard, I'm going to disengage rather than viewing that action as unhappiness. And I think a lot of the times even when we see people doing things good, we say, well, they're doing things good because they're selfish. They're actually wicked. And that was unfortunately the toll that a
Yeah,
lot of,
how
I mean,
interesting, right?
think about gurus, for example. Like, it's like what I found is a lot of the things that might even be organically peaceful and loving. If you have this media apparatus in this society as a part of this imperialist plan, oftentimes the things that they tell you about everything is subverted. So what you're told is up and what you've been told is up is actually down and vice versa. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I actually start to discern for myself? And all we can really say is like, first attack the mental judgments because then you start to see things as judgments rather than facts. And just that little separation that you have within your own self and your own mental process, it makes it much easier to see it on the public scale because you got to stop the bleeding too. So you got to stop the bleeding, got to stop the influence of things to further color the mind and further you from judging. And I feel like attacking the judgment internally as a first step does both. It counteracts the previous judgments that you made against yourself, And then it also counteracts the ability for someone to kind of pigeonhole you and help influence your decisions based off of future judgments that they place on others. And you're like, well, that's not really true because all the judgments that have been placed on me aren't true, or all the stereotypes that have been placed in. And you can still say like, hey, what's true for me isn't true for that person, but this caricature of a person, of a man, of a woman, of whatever, like, isn't necessarily true. Like, we are internally led beings because we're part of that seer. And I think operating from that space, it also changes the way you talk. It changes, and when you change the way you talk, it changes the relationships that you're in. It starts to change the entire like existence that you live in. And um, so I guess like one little practice, I guess we can leave folks with like a little practice would be, and I'm passing this along from
I want to talk
Tulsi.
about one more thing before you
Please.
hold on,
Okay, yeah,
before you
please
talk about this, because we did talk
go.
about Jeffrey Epstein, so I think it would be remiss not to at least mention Swami Satchidananda and the
Yeah.
fact that there are allegations against Swami Satchidananda. And people often ask me, like, how can you still be part of this organization? How can you still follow his teachings? How can you defend him? Because again, it comes from this place of like there not being all good or all bad. That we get to just live in this world where people can be good and quote unquote bad. That people can do things that harm people or perceptions of harm people and do a lot of good for other people. So I have said all along, I have no idea what did or did not happen. I was not there. I cannot be there. What I do feel like is there are women who suffer right now, today, who are suffering. And therefore, it is my job to be compassionate towards them. But at the same time, I am not into cancel culture. I don't feel like people deserve to be canceled
Yeah.
because of what they did or didn't do, because I don't believe in good and evil. I don't believe in wrong or right or bad. Or I believe that people are nuanced and that we really want so badly for people to be flat, two-dimensional things.
Mm, mm,
And it's that judgment that makes us feel better when we make people flat and two-dimensional. But
mm.
it is very nuanced. And I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not, if any of y'all want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about it. But at the same time, I feel great compassion for anybody who is suffering. And I really truly feel like we are so busy trying to figure out what truth is that we forget about the suffering of humans. So whether it is true or not true is kind of irrelevant to me. What's more important is the suffering that's happening and how we're dealing with the people that suffered. And so I just, I want to be, I think that's true of everything. Like for me, if
Hmm.
there is someone suffering, then I want to be compassionate towards them. I don't have their truth doesn't have to be true. And I think also this goes back to like my history with mental health and being around a lot of people who have mental health issues because sometimes their truth is not what we perceive as reality. Right? There
Yeah.
are people, I was in therapy with this young woman who had a Scotty dog who was the meanest thing that talked to her all day long and told her really horrible things about herself and was really mean. That was not real, according to us, right?
Mm,
But
yeah.
believe me, it felt pretty real to her when this mean dog was telling her a lot of evil stuff all day.
Mm,
So am I going to be like, well, that's not real. So you should just not be bothered by it. Well, that was her experience and that was real for her. And
mm,
therefore, I have to be compassionate towards whatever her reality is. So it's not for me to judge what people's reality is or what their truth is. It's just for me to say, yes, I live in a very nuanced world. I do live in this really like there's a lot of dialectics, like we got to be, you know, in this neutral space, but that doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of compassion and love for somebody no matter what the reality is.
mm.
So, sorry. Now you can
No.
give our
Yeah.
wonderful tour we're
Yeah.
going to
No.
check out with, but I just wanted to add that in there because I don't want to feel like I'm not being in
I'm
integrity
like,
with the conversation. I think it's hard to mention sexual abuse lightly without acknowledging how it's affected the yoga world and the gurus and including my own guru, Swami
100%.
Satchidananda.
I mean, I Ooh, that's a we got to go down that one because
There'll be lots
yeah,
of convo on that.
that's a whole nother one. But really, it's just and I think what people really realize in their own personal lives, and I think like just like I was saying, in the black community, that's a really big thing. Is like redemption, forgiveness. Like yes, there might be victims, and even for the person that even the person that did or didn't do whatever, like they still deserve forgiveness too. And that's what we really started with is like judgment. The reason why that there's like this logical tilt to judgment, like I've got to be right, what's true, what's the actual reality. Let's argue about the details and figure out like what really happened. It's so beautiful. I thought of this earlier, but it's coming up now. The person who taught me what you're saying is like really not, there's no it's like everything's perception. The first person I argued with about that point of view was a lawyer. She was like everything's perception. You can make, everything's perception. And um putting all that is just everything. And I'm like, why are you saying that? Like, no, like, isn't the law supposed to be objective? Like, these rules aren't they supposed to be objective? In a way, it's kind of talking about
Yeah.
this system that we live in. It's like, even the rules, yeah, the rules are ever shifting. The world that we live in is ever shifting. Everything is nuanced. Like the person that, like, the people that created the government, they were slave owners, for example, or like you can go any different way, but all that really matters in the present moment is like how you're responding to that moment. Are you responding, um, t- um, like as you're responding, are you graceful with yourself for how you're actually acting? B, are you coming out of a place of fear? Are you like because I'm not saying this is good or bad, but these are just things to look for if you have never looked for them before. It's like, hey, if you are saying this out of a space of fear versus out of a space of truth and honesty and love, like you can still do that, but just pay attention to the effects of it and just see how the way that you speak, how the things that you identify with, how that impacts your mental space. You talked about mental health. Like a lot of the folks that are suffering, we would say neurodiversion or whatever, the more that they non-identify with those things, they're using that as a tool for healing. And yoga just is like really, you know, what happened to our ease? Swami Sashananda would say, what happened to our ease? Well, we got diseased, we got diseased, and we added things to us that were toxic, that were never really meant to be a part of us. All these identifications, all of these attachments and addictions, and realizing that, hey, there's a mental structure, there's a mental system that does have an impact on these addictions. Like there is a correlation between my thought processes, maybe some things that have happened in my life, and my mental makeup. That's going into astrology a little bit. Like some people are more upper folk, some people are more downer, some people like certain things. There's also that impact. There's also that side of things where like it feels like the creator put us here to have like particular things that we would like that we would be drawn to and that we would be drawn to experiment with and practice and have an opportunity to even practice moderation with in the first place. And so that's why I land on gratitude. If you feel like more grateful for your life and life itself, it's much more easy to be truthful and non-judgmental because you're like, yeah, I ate a bunch of sweets or watched porn or did something that I wasn't supposed to do, but like I'm still alive. Imagine all the people that sacrificed for me to be here, all the things that have happened just for me to have these little experiences. Like they knew that that would happen too. If you're Christian, that works too. That's what Christianity is all about. It's like Christ forgave you for your sins. He knew in the future that you're going to do all the terrible things that you do and continue to do, but God still loves you regardless. That's why you don't have to judge yourself. We without judgment cast the first stone. And for example, like all of these things, but the main tool that I used personally that I like to share with all of you is any little judgment, no matter how big or small, that you're thinking in your own mind, which is really all of them. But the reason why I'm specifying that is like it's non-instigated, right? You're just kind of chilling by yourself. Sometimes you'll have random thoughts that'll pop into your head, and it'll be if you can notice a random thought pop into your head, and it is in the theme of judgment, then we're gonna use let's. The advice I was given from the Toltec was just say, I don't have time to judge myself. Because whatever judgment, let's say you're placing on your wife or your friend in your own mind, you're dressing up as them. So really you're judging yourself in your own mental space in this play that's going on in your imagination. So what ended up happening for me and for some others that I've noticed is that like practicing that mantra. So in practice, it would be like, I don't look too good today, or I don't like where I'm at on the mat today. For example, I feel lethargic, and that's not good. Like that's the judgment part, because you can say I feel lethargic or I feel tired and have no judgment at all. But you can say I don't feel good, and like I always feel like this, and why do I keep doing this to myself? Da 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 da. You might go down these things. You can, if you're able to realize that, just say I don't have time to judge myself. I don't have time to judge myself. Like I imagine writing it on a chalkboard, like I'm in detention, and just writing it over and over and over and over and over again. Literally 10 times, 15 times,
Detention.
20, like just
Put your brain in detention.
yeah, literally. And just be like, hey, that's a negative thought. We need to do some cleaning. We got to do some scrubbing. We're gonna and so I like the Buddhists because they usually emphasize a lot of different mantras for particular reasons. And I think we need some in English that like resonate, or at least some affirmations that resonate. And I found that one really works because it's a little condescending. It's like you don't have time for this, like and just in our culture that works a little bit. There's a little bit of that humor where it's like, well, you don't have time for this. What are you doing? And it tickles the ego in a way that it makes a little bit of space for it to allow some things to come through, because your ego is also a guard. A lot of us on the spiritual like little path, we realize that like you might want to stop your addiction, but your ego doesn't, and it'll come up with plans and schemes to prevent you. So you have to almost kind of like sneak in the back door around. It's not always, you can't always directly confront, but because then it'll rebel. So sometimes these little tools, like
Yeah,
I don't have
I
time to
think
judge
it's part
myself.
of the neutralizing way of thinking about that, Quentin, is
Mm,
does this serve me or does it not serve me?
mm-hmm,
And then what is it serving?
mm.
Is this helping me recognize that I am my own, like the higher true self? Is this serving my peace or is it not serving my peace? That's a simple question because then it takes good and bad out of it. It's just like, is this serving my higher purpose or is it not? Smoking, is it serving my higher purpose? That's literally how I quit smoking. I had to stop thinking that it was bad and I had to start thinking, how is this serving me? So it's obviously serving me in some way. And I realized it was serving me in a lot of ways. And it was actually a really good coping tool. But I was like, is this ultimately serving my higher purpose? And I had to start being like, no, it's not. So I got to come up with some different coping tools. But as long as I kept saying it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, I got to quit, this is a problem, all that negativity, then it really started. I was stuck in it and I was stuck in the cycle of it. So just, as you're observing those thoughts and then say, then I don't have time for this today. I
I
got
got
time.
money to make. I don't have time to
I
be
love you.
hating
I
on
have
you.
things to do.
I don't have time to be
I got
hating
joy
on
to
you.
have.
Yeah, like wait,
That's
this
right.
isn't in the budget. We didn't budget this mental energy on hating. Like haters, and you can play with all. That's why I love the Bhagavad, because Krishna uses all the different tools to tackle it with Arjuna. He's like, people are going to look at you crazy, like, and then he goes this, and he goes, ultimately, it's all me, and just whatever the information is, whatever works for you that gets you to that place. That's really what Radha and I are all about. Like we mentioned Swami Satchidananda, really like we didn't really mention integral yoga too much. It's like it's just about we're all made different. Like there's little categories we can try to summarize and group large folks of people into, but what works for you might not work for me. What worked for me at 25 might not work for you until you're 55, and there's all these different elements of things that go on. But really the goal is really what we just want to emphasize, is that like peace of mind, stilling the mind, wherever you're at that gets you to that point, and then trying to assess and act from that space more often than not. You're not always going to be able to control it. Someone might die right in front of your face, and you're not prepared for that, no matter how long you've lived under direct supervision from like, in these different spaces. Like there are some challenges that like are meant to kind of like jack us up a little bit, and but just to reaffirm our conviction and being dedicated to this quest. Like, okay, now what can I do? Now how can I act? And I just, the little message that I just want to impart all of y'all on is like, in addition to Radha's, like perception is everything. Like that person is as entitled to defending their perception as much as you are, and it just is what it is. And when you to prioritize being all right than being right, and just being living in good communion with one another, and being like, okay, that dude's like that because he's watching my six actually. Like that person's actually watching my back. I might, instead of choosing to conflict with them and see them as opposites, I could see them as comrades. And um not using comrade to be loaded or anything here, but just just I am wearing all black. But just we're all just in this together, welcoming each other home. And I think that's like really what I want to leave folks with is you have the space to be
We're all in this
authentically
together.
yourself. We're all in this together, and um and not only that, as long as you're breathing, like you're being kept alive for a reason. And um to just refocus on your mission, whatever
And
that
that's enough.
is, and that's
And
enough.
you're enough. Just that's
My
enough.
dad would always say, all you have to do, son, is breathe in and breathe out. That's it. And what I'll add to that is like, and that happens automatically. so so just be easy, be cool. Anything else you'd like to add?
Breathe in and breathe out this week, folks, and take that with you and just be. Yeah. Just be who be.
Bang. Cool. All right, well,
Yep.
that's all I got. Thank you.
All right. Om.
Peace.